Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Today in Manufacturing podcast. With me this week are Jeff Ranke and Anna Wells. We each have more than 15 years of experience covering the manufacturing industry. Every week, we take the 5 most popular stories on our websites and discuss the implications they have on the industry going forward. But before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. Just a simple thumbs up on YouTube will really help us out a lot as well. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at in.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. And you can also subscribe on YouTube at IN Magazine so you can get a notification for every Thursday when we go live at 2. Jeff, how are you doing this week?
I am good, David. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good. Are you getting over the podcast listener shaming of the blocking and tackling?
I think I've moved past it. I think I'm doing all right here. I think I gave a decent explanation as to why we had some audio issues.
Yeah.
We're working through those. I accepted responsibility, gave some insight as to the issue. Hopefully that was enough. Yeah,
that's all you can do is we got to accept responsibility. And I got to say a huge thank you to the many people that reached out to let us know that even though we checked the podcast once it was uploaded to our directory and sent to the Spotify's, the Apple Podcasts, and the YouTubes out there, that then everything went bad after that. So thank you for letting us know, just because without that feedback, it would take us a lot longer to fix the issue. But this week, Anna, this week, audio problems, none of them going to be perfect.
Yeah, it's a great reminder that even when you think everything is fine, it never is.
It's like we should almost take some of our advice that we give out like on a near weekly basis and use just a little bit for ourselves.
Just be on edge at all times.
No pressure, producer Alex.
Yeah.
Yeah, no pressure to the audio engineers out there, or ours in particular. And also, like, I don't know if it was necessarily a good thing to go daring technical difficulties right as we were about to jump in.
Yeah, that's true.
It's okay. We'll knock on the faux wood that we actually work on. Before we get started with our first story this week, we have another word from our sponsor, Better Engineering. Looking for the ultimate industrial washing system for your facility? Better Engineering delivers state-of-the-art industrial part washers tailored for manufacturing, food, and pharmaceutical processing. We integrate automation and robotics to eliminate hand washing, increasing throughput and water savings while using eco-friendly chemistry. Whether you need customer stock cleaning systems, we've got you covered. Built to last, American-quality stainless steel systems. Better Engineering. Engineering cleaning solutions for a better tomorrow. Visit betterengineering.com to revolutionize your cleaning process today. All right, our first story this week. UAW threatens strike as Stellantis delays Belvidere plant plans. Last year, a massive labor movement saw tens of thousands of workers strike at Ford, GM, and Stellantis. When the UAW and Stellantis finally reached a deal, it included provisions for the automaker's assembly plant in Belvidere, Illinois. The company idled the factory in February 2023. As part of the deal, Stellantis agreed to resume some operations in Belvidere, including a new Mopar mega hub in 2024, new stamping operations in 2025, and production of a mid-sized truck in 2027. Stellantis recently informed the UAW that it is delaying the Belvidere project, seemingly indefinitely. In a statement, the company again said it needs to, quote, ensure the company's future competitiveness and sustainability. Seems to be the company's go-to these days. No one knows if or when things might turn around in Belvidere, and tensions are rising. The union has accused Stellantis of violating last year's collective bargaining agreement. Multiple UAW locals have begun a grievance process that could see strikes across multiple facilities. The UAW says the postponement violates the U.S. investment letter in the collective bargaining agreements. The UAW says the goal is not to strike, but 7 Stellantis UAW locals began this process on August 19th. That includes Toledo's assembly complex, the Warren stamping, and the Sterling Heights assembly plant. Stellantis says it has not violated commitments made in the collective bargaining agreement's investment letter and called a potential strike illegal. Jeff, you just really, really called this one last week. Some might even say you willed it into existence.
Oh, no.
Oof. Hope not. Definitely would have been okay missing on this one. I don't think it was a big shock. And actually, by the response from Fain and the UAW, I think they kind of saw this coming for a little bit too, even before the announcement was made, I believe, on Tuesday. So probably not a huge shock to a lot of people. I think this is going to get super ugly. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot going on here, not just between will they strike or not, because it looks like they probably will. Yeah. And then the whole legality of it in terms of what is Stellantis' responsibility if it's an illegal strike, and it's going to get very convoluted there. I think what this really gets into when you get at Fain versus Tavares here, number one, when your CEO is known on a first name basis by any news outlet, that's bad. Yeah. Okay. When you're a company even the size of Stellantis here, Carlos Tavares is getting to be too well known, I think, in a lot of circles. Mm-hmm. That tells me they're putting out a lot of bad news. I think there's going to be more bad news coming. About a month ago, we did that story talking about how they were looking at cutting back on some of these brands. Yeah. They weren't sure if they're not winners, they were going. And I think we took that as this is sort of normal corporate speak in looking at sales numbers. Things are working, you're going to make cuts to go with the winners, so to speak. Yeah. I think this is a much more stronger part of their strategy going forward. Mm-hmm. When you look at the way things are sort of divvied up on their website, first of all, they've got things grouped by luxury, European, American, global. There's one global brand. It's Jeep. Okay. So that tells me everything else is going to get some pretty intense review and intense scrutiny, especially when you look at the quote-unquote American brands, which are Dodge, Chrysler, and Ram. Mm-hmm. Okay? We talked about some of the issues there. Dodge has one vehicle. Chrysler has one vehicle. Dodge has a limited number. Ram is having some issues with numbers for selling trucks. It would not surprise me to see a ton of consolidation there, which is obviously going to affect the UAW and the American auto worker. Mm-hmm. So it's going to get tough there. I also think when you look at specifically in Belvidere here, Mopar. When it comes to Mopar, we're looking at 6 brands out of the 14 that Stellantis has here. Mm-hmm. So if you look at the Mopar brands being Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat, and Alfa Romeo, and you're looking at potentially consolidating those, that sort of leans into what he's talking about with this facility and the future outlook there, maybe not being very bright as well. Yeah. Like I said, I think this is going to be ongoing, and I think it's going to be ugly for a bit.
Okay. If you had to pick a winner, which of those 3, the Mopar Mega Hub, the truck production, or what was the third one?
The stamping.
The stamping. Which, if any, do you think has a shot of actually making it to Belvidere?
The only one that I could really see, and maybe Anna's got some different feelings here, would be the Mopar parts. Mm-hmm. But I don't think the stamping is going to scale up, and I have a hard time seeing them bringing a light truck vehicle down to Illinois after they just made some cuts basically in workforce for trucks up in Detroit.
Well, or maybe not necessarily come into Belvidere without strings where it might be pulled from somewhere else.
Yeah, it's going to get ugly.
Anna, do you have as such a grim outlook as Jeff does just in terms of, say what you want. I guess Tavares is at least sticking with what he's known to do. Like he's cutting brands that aren't winners. We're likely going to see more that are cuts. And he's, instead of just trying to serve multiple masters, it's just like, no, this Belvidere project is not going to work for us now. It might never work for us. Mm-hmm. So we got to change our strategy.
Yeah, perhaps. I would say first thing, I agree with Jeff that this is a bit of a hornet's nest. And I think, just as an observer, it just... getting a break from all this contentious intensity in the auto industry would be nice. I'm not blaming either side for this, but if you were living it, this was your workplace, if this was in your community, it's just got to be exhausting watching all this play out again after the strikes that we saw in 2023. So right? You
would expect, you thought you hit a lull, mm-hmm. Okay, the strike's over. Everyone's going to be cool for at least the term of this latest agreement.
Yeah, exactly.
2 months later.
But yeah, you talk about Carlos Tavares being tough. He is known for that, making those tough choices, really cutting things to the bone if he has to make things work. He's a very highly respected executive in this industry, so I don't doubt his abilities in any way. But I did note there was a report in the Detroit Free Press this week that talked about how Tavares has actually cut his vacation short and flown out to take an emergency trip to Detroit to try to put a face behind this and try to talk through some of this. A source told that the Free Press that he, quote, wanted to make clear he was handling it personally and that North American operations are basically funding the rest of the group. So that last part, I think, really emphasizes just how much Stellantis wants to play ball to make sure that there is no strike. And I know that the legality of that is in question, but everyone's got their lawyers, and if it's interpretable in any way, that doesn't mean the risk is not there just because Stellantis says that it's not legal, right? So, adding to that, so one analyst suggested that Stellantis's main mistake in North America was to keep increasing prices in a bid to boost margins, even as the market was signaling customers were not ready to pay, making some Stellantis models too expensive. And I had actually not read that before, that this was something that analysts were believing was one of the bigger problems that was eating into their sales numbers. But when you couple that with that blowout executive pay package that was very widely reported for Tavares last year, right? I think the UAW can kind of fall back on their favorite talking point of this is corporate greed at the top tier. Look what they did to miss. This was their fault. This was not us. So now you have to fix it. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's probably why Tavares too is, he actually ate some humble pie on the most recent earnings call and said, I was arrogant. Mm-hmm. We kind of screwed this up. So he's trying to fix it. Yeah. This all comes concurrent with a shareholder lawsuit that is accusing Stellantis of concealing rising inventories and other weaknesses before posting what was very disappointing results in their most recent earnings. There is a lot to manage here. And I think if the UAW can find a way to legally strike, then that's the worst thing that could happen right now for Stellantis. Oh, yeah. So I think you will see a lot of effort being put forth to kind of maybe reach a compromise on something they can, whether, like you said, whether it's shifting some things around or finding a way to appease the union, just so they can keep going. Because again, North America is holding the water here. They don't have the room to fool around with a strike right now. They really don't. Yeah. So there's a lot that has to be figured out.
Doug is watching us live. He says, hi, y'all. So hi, Doug. It's good to see you again. He's also working with our producers right now to try and figure out our live audio issues. So hi and thanks, Doug.
Do we have live audio issues? Oh, okay. It's okay.
Yeah. Oh, future ones. Very good. Very good. Well, so talking about cutting the vacation short, UAW is actually planning a rally outside the Sterling Heights Assembly plant on Friday, this Friday, August 23rd. That's because Tavares is set to visit the plant the same day. He's already refused to meet with local union leadership, but
be a hot day.
I understand. I understand. Maybe just we're going to give it a minute. Yeah. We're going to talk to the workers, not the union. UAW President Shawn Fain, issued a couple of statements, and I just wanted to mention them and kind of dissect them a little bit, just because these situations seem to be where Fain shines. Kind of to your point, Anna, the victories we won last year in our stand-up strike at the Big Three weren't suggestions. They were binding commitments in a union contract. And we, as the UAW, intend to enforce that contract to its fullest extent. And then Fain just came out swinging, as I said, as Fain does.
No surprise.
Yeah, no, it would actually be more surprising if it's Fain then subtly mentioned, he came out swinging saying, I find a pathetic irony in the fact that Stellantis is now, for the first time, citing, quote, market conditions as their reason for attempting to break their promises to Belvidere and auto workers across America. It's always, quote, market conditions when they have to stiff an auto worker or close a plant. it's never market conditions when they want to raise CEO pay by 56%. And I'm wasting no time.
Knew we weren't done with that.
No time, yeah. Carlos Tavares is telling the American auto worker, market conditions for thee, but not for me. Jeff, he's a poet.
I mean, he is pretty good.
He's good at what he does.
I'll give him some credit there. I think it's, when you were talking about holding the water here in North America, is that from a sales perspective or a production perspective or both?
The quote that the source told the Free Press was, North American operations are basically funding the rest of the group. And so I don't know if that is like a speaking to the fact that those are higher margin vehicles. And obviously we know that Stellantis has made a lot of progress selling EVs in Europe, but those are probably the smallest margins that they're getting. So I don't know if it's just from a profit standpoint or what.
It's just interesting because typically they're always championing the Fiat. I mean, like that's their flagship right now. So it's interesting to kind of hear that put out there. Yeah, I think this is, like I said, Fane is not going to let up. I mean, he had a pretty strongly worded video that he put out talking about something about piss poor performance and everything else with the CEO, and called in a 2.5 minute video. He must have used Tavares' name at least a dozen times. Yeah. So definitely a lot of contentious activity right there. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in the next week. If there is a bit of a cool down or it goes the other way, you know which way I'm leaning.
Well, if that's true, just how much water North American operations are holding, that gives the UAW just incredible bargaining power, incredible leverage. According to Fane, now he says the delay due to market conditions is a chance to kick the can past the union's contract expiration date, so then they can cite market conditions once again and never open the plant. That must be the little loophole in the language where they can maybe get around that illegal contract break that he was talking about earlier.
It's good to have lawyers.
Yeah, many are getting paid right now.
Yeah.
Many are getting paid. All right, our next most popular story. Toyota could be first automaker to fully ditch gas-only cars. A recent Reuters report indicates that Toyota may soon go all hybrid, making it the first automaker to ditch gas-only cars. Akio Toyoda, Toyota's own chairman, thinks the market for all electrics will max out at 30%. Now, the company's, quote, multi-pathway strategy offers a way to hedge any bets against consumer shifts. David Christ, head of sales and marketing for Toyota in North America, recently told Reuters, quote, going forward, we plan to evaluate, car line by car line, whether going all hybrid makes sense. The shifts could come or would come as each model reaches its redesign year. The RAV4, for example, is scheduled for a revamp as soon as model year 2026, and the Camry is already losing its all-gas version next year, like the Sienna and Land Cruiser before it. The new hybrid line reportedly would feature bigger batteries and a plug-in, and Toyota claims to have a solid-state battery in development that would offer 750 miles of range. Anna, ditching gas only is notable, but when it comes to the climate crisis, is that going to be enough?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot going on here, and you have to kind of separate the business concerns from the environmental ones, but obviously they are intertwined.
Yes,
inextricably. As you look at this, but what's interesting to me is about the story is really how it's being framed. Right, I actually wasn't super surprised by this. I think it's another example of Toyota hedging their bets on EVs, like it's always been doing. And if anyone's going to go all hybrid, why would it not be Toyota, who has pioneered? They basically put fuel efficient hybrids on the map with the Prius. That was the first vehicle that really took off. And now to position it as Toyota might be the first automaker to fully ditch ICE vehicles is smart marketing, I think, because it characterizes them as a leader in clean energy when honestly, before they were positioned as being way behind their peers in this transition, despite what many would consider a head start with what they had going with the Prius. In the end, to your point, what does it mean, right? As hybrids, as you look at hybrids, there's a lot of, I think, disagreement on the role that they should play going forward as we look at clean energy in the environment. It depends on how they're being used. Automakers continue to add range incrementally, but as of right now, the average plug-in hybrid gets about 30 miles maybe of range electric before you switch to gas. And if you charge at home regularly, then you can get away with using very little gas if this is your commuter vehicle or whatever. It falls within that average of what people tend to drive in a day, 30 miles or so.
Right.
If you don't recharge it regularly, and some studies have shown that many plug-in hybrid users don't.
They just it's charged and they use it once and then they just go gas.
And then eventually, like when they have
the braking helps out a little bit and all that.
Well, yeah.
It does, but if you're not reloading that battery every day, then you're actually driving around a much less efficient vehicle that's heavier because it's lugging around this giant useless battery, right? I know there are still a lot of people out there that when it comes to EVs, they're like, yes, but not yet. And I get that, like many things need to change. People are not quite convinced on that. Electric vehicle charging infrastructure and the range things, of course, there are concerns. But I think many environmentalists see the mass adoption of hybrids as a detour, kind of like it kind of kicks the can down the road and still means relying heavily on fossil fuels for many years to come. And if you look at it, like every year of delay really locks in those carbon emissions for years to come. And it's just a reality. So if the goal is zero emission vehicles, this doesn't get us there anytime soon. And so I can see why this might be a little bit controversial when you look at it from that perspective. That said, the average buyer is not seeing the kind of maturity with all electrics I think that they want. I mean, there's just still a lot of barriers for a lot of people. And so what do automakers do, I guess? You have to look at it from that perspective as well, which is I don't blame them for trying to figure out how are we going to make some money now while we work our way to that battery that works for people, that 700-mile range or 500-mile range or whatever it is. I get that. I get why they're like, well, this has got to work in the interim. Unfortunately, this is a change we should have made 20 years ago. Now it's so late in the game to be trying to catch up from a climate perspective and push the goalposts further away by somebody buying a plug-in hybrid now and having it for 10 more years. It just it's a lot. So it's a challenging place to be right now because I think you can't expect a business like Toyota to tread water forever and wait for the consumer to catch up from a demand perspective. They're trying to produce vehicles that they think people want right now.
Yeah.
So I get that. But again, there are some issues with looking at the viability of a plug-in hybrid for your entire portfolio for the future, and what it means for the climate.
Jeff, it seemed like maybe a year ago, it just seemed like we were going all in on EVs kind of suddenly. And as part of that conversation, we kind of thought Toyota was going to wind up being left in the lurch a little bit because they had focused on hybrids. And as a result, they were light years behind everybody in the EV scene. And now, as things have kind of settled a little bit, the dust has settled, and we realize that, this mass EV adoption is maybe going to take a little bit, is still maybe in the crawl phase. Is it now that Toyota, by potentially going hybrid only, but still cutting out gas, could wind up being the true leader?
Too soon to tell.
Yeah.
I think we want to make a lot of these sort of immediate projections when it's still too soon.
Yeah.
I think what's going to be interesting here is this is going to create some interesting bedfellows on a consumer level, because if we get to a point, let's just say we get to a point 3-4 years from now, when you look at a category like trucks, Toyota's got number 5 and 6, 4 and 5, something like that with Tacoma and Tundra. Combined, they still sell fewer than half of the number of F-150s that are out there. However, if we get to a point where Ford says, we're all in on the Lightning, this is what we're doing in 4 years, there's not going to be a different option available, and Toyota is going this hybrid route, all of a sudden, a lot of those individuals who probably would never have gone to a Toyota, because in my opinion, when you think about Toyota, you're thinking about reliability, you're thinking about efficiency, not necessarily performance and flash.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, if those folks are EV averse and Toyota is your only option, create some really interesting consumer dynamics. Will those folks who are always so brand loyal to Ford or GM or whomever, they're going to cross over and go to Toyota now because they feel more comfortable because of the EV options not being there or whatever the case is. So it's going to be very interesting. I think what Toyota is essentially doing is betting on the short term. to take care of the long term.
Yeah.
And that could be dangerous. I think you could lose some people that way, just like you could lose some people who are not going to buy EVs. You could lose some people who only want an EV right now. That could be a lower number, but I still think there is going to be this sort of wave of consumer activity that's going to come about where we're going to see another one of these uneven spikes in EV purchasing. Just like we did about 2 years ago, there was a huge roller coaster up, came crashing down. It's going to go back up again before we see it even out.
Yeah.
So I think it's actually a little bit more of a gamble on Toyota's part here. To go all hybrid and not really going full force into the EV side of things. I know they're going to have some electric options so that some of their vehicles will be that, but I don't know. I think they could risk long-term gain here.
Well, and I mean, there's still a long ways from getting rid of all gas-only models. You know, when I was at the dealership and I'm looking at a hybrid truck and they're like, yep, about 1 in 20 is a hybrid right now. So you're going to need to wait. I mean, that's just the reality of what Toyota's making right now.
Right.
You know, so the decision to go all hybrid, some have said, according to that Reuters report, is a bit of a no-brainer for Toyota and its customers because now the technology is only adding about $2,000 to the car's retail price when previously, it was significantly higher. I wanted to float a couple of stats out there and see what you guys thought. So in 2019, hybrids were less than 3% of all U.S. sales. Now they're 11.3% and rising fast, according to Cox Automotive. Hybrids accounted for just 9% of Toyota sales in 2018, but as of June, 37% of Toyota's sales were hybrids. That was incredibly higher than I expected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, Jeff, could you imagine that like 40% of the business Toyota's doing right now is hybrid?
Well, I think that's what they're championing. That's what they're putting out there, and those are the more abundant options that are there. Again, they're putting a lot of eggs in that short-term basket. Yeah. And I would be leery of it long-term.
Doug says Toyota is lost. They could have been on the leading edge and got lost in a hydrogen cloud. Well, we've talked about that before. That being said, the move to hybrids is good as it is a gateway drug to full EV. I think the next wave of adopters will be hybrid, but Anna is right. It is really a waste of time having both systems in a car to lug around. Is that what you were saying? All right.
Yeah, I mean, I was. Yeah, it just you're not. It's a less efficient vehicle when you're not using the electric range.
Yeah.
Then you could be driving just like a more efficient ICE car and be better off. That's the conclusion that I think a lot of analysts have made on that. But
no, that's fair. I was just hoping it'd just be yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Durr.
Durr, David. Thanks, Doug.
All right. Well, our next most popular story this week, Harley-Davidson walks back DEI policies. In a statement published on X this week, Harley-Davidson announced revisions to its diversity and progressive policies following criticism from conservative activists. Harley will switch up how it manages diversity, equity, and inclusion and make changes to its sponsorships, affiliations, and employee training. Harley says the changes are a result of an internal stakeholder review that sought to, quote, better align company activities to the needs of both its business and community. Harley says it hasn't, quote, operated a DEI function since April 2024, doesn't have hiring quotas, and no longer has spending goals for minority-owned suppliers. The company will also stop participating in Human Rights Campaign scoring, which is a benchmarking tool designed to promote LGBTQ plus inclusion. Harley is reviewing all affiliations and said that all sponsorship activities will now require central approval by the company or the Harley-Davidson Foundation. The company says it will only focus on growing motorcycling, retaining its, quote, loyal riding community, and supporting first responders, military members, and veterans. Jeff, is that the go-to deflection, right? Like, we're going to do all this, but support the troops.
Yeah, it's always easy to wrap yourself in the flag. That's always a safe way to go. So when we talk about these stories, usually I just have some general notes.
Yeah.
Just kind of go with that, help spur my thoughts. I'm actually going to read almost like word for word what I wrote down here because I don't want to get my words mixed up here in any way, shape, or form. In my opinion, when it comes to, and I'm going to paint with some real broad strokes here, any of this DEI stuff, in my opinion, there's two ways of looking at all of this once you put it on paper. The first is, do we want to get better? Now, in that statement you read, they said, we want to get better. And then they listed like 4 things. Stop it there.
Yeah.
Do you want to be better? Okay. The other question is, are we afraid of overreactions that are definitely going to happen both ways? Some folks are going to say you're not doing enough. Some folks are saying you're going too far. Stick with the first thing. Do you want to be better? Because in my opinion, when you look at your organization with Harley, we're looking at like 10 or 11,000 employees globally. Do you want to be better? To me, that says we want our workforce to be diverse, equal, and inclusive so that we can have the best possible workforce possible. Now, you can stop right there. You're good.
Yeah.
That's all this has to be. Okay. But then it gets complicated because everyone over politicizes it.
Yeah.
And as a result, the true goal of what you want to do as an organization gets completely lost. And you lead to what I would call a lot of nonsensical overcorrections. Job quotas are not the answer.
Right.
Being involved in political activities that don't represent your company, its employees, its customers, that doesn't make sense. You don't have to do that. You're not forced to do that. Say, look, we want to make sure that we are giving everybody that we possibly can an opportunity to work at our organization because we want the absolute best programmer, machinist, quality control specialist, truck driver, whatever they may be at our company. That's what DEI needs to be. When you start going on Twitter, on X, and any other social media platform to explain all of this, you're overcomplicating it. You're getting people riled up in an unnecessary fashion. And then you have to put out blanket statements like that makes everybody try to feel warm and fuzzy, but are extremely transparent and annoying.
Yeah.
I'm not saying stick to motorcycles. I'm not saying any of those types of things. All I'm saying is you had it right when you said we want to be better.
Yeah.
Stop there.
No, that was my biggest point was the tweet on Monday. They say we remain committed to listening to all members of our community as we continue on our journey together as one Harley-Davidson. United we ride. Now, here's a statement that's a submission to our critics. Like, it was all over the map and really confusing. And then they have that little line at the end where it's like, we're not going to do anything unless we legally have to. It's just like, you can just, like you said, just say we're going to be better. Yeah. And I do feel like, Jeff said it, but I feel like this stick to sports mentality is everywhere now. Like it was stick to tractors. It was stick to tractor supplies. Now it's stick to motorcycles. I mean, Harley says United we ride, but isn't the statement that they put out dividing? Yeah,
or at least like feels a little bit like it's pandering to one specific group. I think as we discussed recently in the John Deere segment on this very issue a few weeks back, it's probably better to have never done this in the first place than to have instituted some type of pledge and then walked it back because of online criticism. I mean, to me, that's like the worst thing that you can possibly do. I know it's like DEI can be a contentious topic for people. Not everybody agrees that this is the right way to tackle diversity within a company. You have the right to take whatever position on that you choose. But I will say this, bowing to the pressure of a social media campaign puts a company in a very precarious position when, you're almost encouraging that type of backlash, I feel like, going forward. And that, because you're showing everybody that it works, that they can push you. And so for any perceived slight in the future, you have emboldened any internet trolls, or maybe that's too harsh of a word, but you have emboldened people to take to the internet to provide you with that type of aggressive feedback because you have said in the past that matters to you and that you will act based on that. And I don't believe that it sets a good precedent for a company. I know that companies have struggled when they have set their own artificial thresholds, spending requirements, things along those lines. Sometimes a company's objectives are in the right place, but then they kind of kneecap themselves by establishing some type of arbitrary benchmark that's maybe not practical, like notably in regions where they already have a challenge hiring talent.
Right.
And so I think that is a mistake on the part of those companies, but it doesn't feel like that's what's taking place here. It feels like, it didn't feel to me like Harley was saying, like, we're trying to do this, but we need to change how we approach it in a more workable and effective way. Instead, it was more like some people that told us that they don't like it, so we're not going to do it.
Yeah. We will listen to Twitter trolls.
Yeah.
And completely change our business as a result.
Like somebody shot their Harley up with a gun because we went woke. That's like, I mean, that truly happened on social media. Like,
well, yeah, it's the Bud Light fallout, right?
Right.
Like all of these brands are fearing the ramifications if they get too far off a brand. And it's just like, I think that we're no longer in the whole like all press is good press, right? Anymore. At some point, you just need to be quiet. You know what? Like the best response to this is from Harley: delete your Twitter account, man. Just be like, you know what? We're off the cesspool.
Yeah, forget it. Well, and to Jeff's point, I agree. If you stop at we want to do better, or you take a statement like, hey, what we're doing right now isn't actually working for us, but we're going to try it in a different way because we want to be better. Like, to me, the difference is like that is how you can maybe toe the line and speak to people on each side of that issue. The latter, in my opinion, just shows like a lack of a backbone and a willingness to cave to the loudest voice in the room, which I think is sort of like pitiable and sad from a Fortune 500 company. I said that about John Deere as well. I'm not just targeting Harley, but I feel like do what you want to do and make it your own, and maybe don't say so much, be better. Yeah. But to go back and forth because somebody bullies you online, like that's sad, man. Like,
yeah. Well, and the second part of that is not just saying you're going to be better, but then do it.
Do it.
Yeah.
Be better, because actions will shut up all of these cowards on the internet too.
Well, and if DEI initiatives, if they do bring more candidates in the door because they do feel like, maybe the company culture is accepting of more people, that is a legitimate way to get more talent in the door, where people could see like, your consumer facing brand and think, hey, this is maybe not the company for me. There's a way of doing both. And it's just like, you're supposed to like be showing this folksy American, like hardworking biker mentality. And, you bow to a tweet. Like, I don't know. That's just, it was ridiculous to me. And also, it was also ridiculous to me that they're like, anything we do going forward will like have to be approved by the Harley Foundation. Just like, listen, we're not doing anything until all the bosses that are all accountable say it's okay.
Just lead by example. It's not that complicated. Set a culture within your organization that applies to all these things we want everybody to be. Mm-hmm. That's how you make change.
And a lot of people are still saying that this isn't going far enough, and that they won't lay off of Harley until I'm going to mess up his name, but like Jochen Zeitz, the CEO of Harley, president and CEO, is gone. Like basically they kind of did a victory lap saying like, all right, we got Harley to admit it, but now we can't let off the gas until they get rid of their leader. It's just, they have to draw a line somewhere.
Going back to what you said, delete the Twitter account. This is just getting toxic and ridiculous. Yeah.
Until like, if anything, that's what you need to do internally. Everyone stay off Twitter. Off it. All right. And Doug's throwing a little shade my way, saying, geez, David ignoring what Anna says.
About, how you...
The last story from the last story. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Thanks, Doug. Salt in the wound, Doug. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Salt in the wound. Good to have you back. Good to have you back. All right. Our next most popular story. Ominous smoke ring in the sky likely has an easy explanation. Wavy TV 10 News in Virginia last week reported on a smoke ring. Wavy TV, WAVY TV 10 in Virginia. Wavy TV. Mm-hmm. Wavy TV, where you turn into our morning show. You waved us, we wave right back at you.
Wavy in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a FaceTime program.
It is. Everybody. It is. They do nothing but smiles and waves. It's too scary to do the news these days. So it's just 30 minutes of waving. Hey, enjoy your morning. We're just having our coffee here. You do the crossword yet? Anyway, the fine journalists at Wavy TV 10 News in Virginia last week reported on a smoke ring hovering above the Hampton Roads area. it had the locals intrigued and quipping about alien invasions in that weird kind of like half-joking tone. What is most likely is that the ring was caused from a small explosion. Specifically, some thought it was an electrical transformer exploding and or catching fire. On Reddit, they were calling it a solution or a self-reinforcing wave, which means it propagates with little loss of energy and retains its shape. In this case, the smoke ring likely retained the cylindrical shape of a transformer that blew up, which can happen due to electrical or mechanical failures, a lack of maintenance, or even lightning strikes. The resulting smoke ring from a transformer failure seems to be a fairly regular occurrence, and similar rings have appeared earlier this year in Ohio, Texas, Germany, even saw some in Disneyland. Now, the U.S. currently has a critical shortage of distribution transformers, which is stifling economic growth. Jeff, while this story does come off more as like a funny, peculiar story, kind of isn't it just like another example of potential infrastructure issues we have in the U.S.?
Sure, but I was kind of hoping you would have more of a paranoid, like, you know.
Oh, we'll get there.
What's really going on here? Mm-hmm. You know, what's the X-Files version of this story?
I'm just saying it was there. It seemed to stay at the exact same height for only 10 minutes and then magically disappears. No one saw it going up or coming down.
It didn't the image didn't lessen anyway. It kept its integrity as well for quite a while.
And it seems like such a perfect circular shape is not really feasible with human technology.
I mean, I wouldn't know.
Nope. Me neither.
Because I'm not allowed to. They're keeping that from us.
Yeah, don't worry. David hired a private investigator to look into this Redditor who explained this.
I already had one in retainer in Virginia.
You had Mythbusters on this one?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. This is going to create at least 3 different YouTube channels.
Oh, can't wait.
People investigating this one.
Or
maybe
it is a sign of a bigger issue, like you said. I mean, we've been talking about the grid a lot in terms of reliability, in terms of overdependence, in terms of the billions with a B dollars in investment that is needed to keep up with stuff like if we want to go to electric vehicles, or even just right now because everything needs to get plugged in order to be powered. So there's a lot of issues there when you talk about who is it that's going to be taking over that facility and making the transformers. I forget now.
Cleveland Cliffs.
Thank you.
Yeah.
They're responding to a need. Okay, we have issues with the grid and with power distribution right now. So I think we could be seeing more of these. I'd already talked about in the article. They've seen similar, maybe not identical, similar types of occurrences in other places too, even Germany across the pond. So we'll see what happens here. I think, like I said, it does show the fact that we need to invest more into a lot of that said, like you said, the critical infrastructure to hopefully avoid some of these conspiracy theories from taking root.
Is it crazy to you that we have a transformer shortage? Like when it comes down to electrical grid basics, I feel like we should never get one of those, how the FDA puts out those supply chain alerts, just hey, just so you know, we're probably not going to have this medicine for the next 6 months. So heads up. I don't feel like we should have ever gotten to a point where they're just hey, did anyone else notice that we don't have any more transformers?
Well, I think part of that, though, is the funding for them.
Yeah.
They're not cheap.
Yeah.
Municipalities are struggling with a lot of infrastructure improvements and dollar, purchases right now. So that's definitely part of it. We still need them. That's great, but somebody also needs to buy them. So there's a lot of different issues when you get into the grid, and we've talked about that a lot. So.
Well, true. And like we talked about with medical stuff, there needs to be just this, someone needs to have our inventory list, right? Just on critical infrastructure components. And just, when it dips into that yellow, just be hey, anyone still making these? Anyone?
But remember during the pandemic when there was a shortage of everything and everyone was we're never going to learn this lesson the hard way again.
Never again.
We're going to remember this forever.
Anna, some people have speculated that similar to when a human dips its finger into the water and it creates a ripple, this potentially was caused by some sort of alien overlord that dipped its finger into an atmosphere.
Some people have thought that?
That is what some people have said.
God.
Just as likely as a transformer blowout.
On a personal... Get out of here.
I got producer Eric on my side.
There's no live studio audience.
I have to be here.
Keep your mouth shut. On a personal note, I have a 6-year-old who's obsessed with aliens right now. And so I'm sure that she would also take issue with how quickly this got buttoned up. You know what I mean? No, seriously, like, thank goodness for internet sleuths, because otherwise I feel like we could have had some drama on our hands if there were not for like some just, physicists hanging around and being like, actually, I know exactly what this is. It had kind of an easy explanation, but the first thing that I thought of, this is not my wheelhouse, Transformers, but it just seemed like it just one of those unfortunate cases that adds to that perception issue that we see in trades and manufacturing and utilities. Things blowing up, spewing out gases, fluids, smoke rings. It just kind of gives fodder to that image that these industrial businesses kind of try so hard to shed. That breakdowns or accidents are dangerous. Like, a white collar incident is like getting a migraine from staring at your computer for too long.
Preach.
And you okay? Do you need to take 5?
I got it.
Okay. But in these cases, it's like smoke rings, gases, chemical burns. We talk about this stuff all the time. Lacerations. They just feel like a little bit scarier. So even though this is commonplace and has a very scientific and logical explanation, I think the visibility of these types of things is just sort of counter from that modern image we want to portray, which is like a clean room instead of a smokestack. And, you see this stuff happening and you're like, ooh, what's going on there? Like why? So I don't know. I mean, we come back to that theme a lot, but when the news cycle is stuff like this, it matters, I think.
Well, and Wavy is not lazy in that they reached out to Dominion Energy and just to see if there was a blown transformer that could have caused this. Dominion Energy came out and said no. So part of the wider conspiracy. The most likely explanation, if it wasn't that, is pyrotechnics. Maybe someone just got into one of those.
But whose pyrotechnics?
Like pyrotechnics we've never seen before on Earth.
Where's your investigator that you just said you had?
Well, the investigator, when asked if this is common for transformers to explode, said, yeah. A lot of them are really cooking over the past few years like never before. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot more of these coming up.
Oh, because of like the higher temperatures?
Yeah. Just a part of the, like what happens when you have like, infrastructure problems and like, extreme climate events.
Interesting.
To me, one of the comments on the video was that the person says, I live there and there have been no reports of a power outage. Another person says that while I agree this could be plausible, it does not fit each of these rings' sightings. Specifically, I'd like to point out that the ring formed, caught fire, and disappeared mid-air in front of spectators in Chattanooga, Tennessee, in a remote area where there is no man-made infrastructure to cause such an event. It was on fire too? Oh, man. This is really wetting my whistle, if you know what I mean. The ring spreads out a bit as it gains altitude. Atmospheric pressure decreases with altitude. Yeah, all right. And producer Alex is right. Have you ever blown a smoke ring? I'm not capable of doing it, but that's exactly what I thought of. I was just like, this is a giant smoke ring.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Yeah. Also, it reminds me of the cottage. I know I've talked about it here previously, but outside of the cottage, we have a transformer on a pole surrounded by trees. It continues to get struck by lightning. Trees fall on it. They just keep replacing it. The fix would be a simple underground line to the house or to the cottage. That's just not on the roadmap. It's like, it seems like, hey, we see, this is just a small anecdote of a greater issue where it's like, hey, we have the tools and technology to make this stop happening. But instead it's like, nah, we'll just keep dipping into our diminishing transformer inventory, keep throwing a new one on the line. All right. Well, if we could get any more of those theories or videos of that thing catching fire in Tennessee, send those to David at IEN.com. All right, our next most popular story. $3 million hypercar prototype crashes on Space Shuttle runway during a test. When you have a $3 million hypercar prototype with an experimental aerodynamics package, you can't just test it on the highway. Hennessy, a maker of performance vehicles, needed a proving ground for its pricey prototype, so it turned to the 15,000-foot Space Shuttle runway at the Kennedy Space Center. Hennessy's Venom F5 is described as a bespoke hypercar with an 1,800 horsepower engine. In a recent test, the vehicle was trying to go from 0 to 250 miles per hour in 4,000 feet. Unfortunately, according to Hennessy Performance CEO John Hennessy, the Venom lost downforce suddenly, causing a loss of control that flipped the car. Motor Trend says the problem was, quote, likely with the aerodynamics package, a common problem with these high-speed cars. Hennessy, however, wouldn't confirm that theory. The good news is that the test car's driver was able to walk away from the accident. It seems like the only damage outside of the vehicle itself was minimal to the runway. Reports say that the auto company was actually hit with a bill for about $700 for damage and cleanup of hydraulic fluid. Just like, talk about salt in the wound. Just like, hey, after you're done picking up the shambles of your $3 million car, here's a $700 bill.
Yeah, you can Venmo us.
Hennessy thanked his engineers for building, quote, an incredibly strong vehicle. Anna, it was strong. Maybe a little too strong?
Why? Too strong? What?
The fact
it's got a question mark by it. He reads everything on the prompter.
No, that's what I mean. Isn't it a little like, I mean, did they put a little bit too much into this one?
I don't know. This vehicle, is an absolute beast. You know, like you're prototyping, you have to figure it out, right?
Yeah.
What I think is cool about Hennessy is it's actually a Texas-based company. So, if you look at like a lot of the hypercars out there, you see that stuff coming out of Europe from these older, firms that have been in existence for many years. Hennessy's like doing its thing in Texas, which is awesome. So if you look at this F5, Venom F5, it's 1,800 horsepower, is twice that of the average Formula One car. So even though that $3 million price tag feels like insanity, this isn't really a car. It's a showpiece for racing enthusiasts. So the Venom F5 Revolution, which is the track-oriented version of the F5, which I assume they're referring to here, set a new production car lap record at the Circuit of the Americas with a 2-minute, 10-second lap of the 3.41 mile long racetrack. Holy cow, that is fast. So right from its launch, Hennessy said that it set out to build the decathlete of hypercars.
Okay.
All right.
Interesting.
That's a good illustration, I guess. But the objective for the hypercar was not only to surpass 300 miles per hour, but to also be a highly capable track car. But my understanding of this is that it's also street legal. Oh. So I think that's helps sell it, right? Because buyers who want this vehicle, they want to show it off too.
Yeah, they don't want to just take it to the track.
Yeah, Jay Leno wants to drive it around downtown LA.
And talk about it. Just
yeah, exactly.
A lot.
But I did think that it was a very interesting story. The Kennedy Space Center runway was just like a weird, irrelevant fact that I think was just like, oh, crazy that like they would even allow that. And then first of all, but then you can kind of understand like, well, where else are they going to test it? They need like just a giant straightaway, right?
Yeah.
So I think like that component was interesting. And then also I think, probably Hennessy is trying to figure out how much good press that they can squeeze out of this, because I don't think that the vehicle was too strong. I think when you consider the fact that the driver, when it was going 250 miles an hour and flipped, walked away without a scratch.
Yeah.
Like that's like I don't know. That's like as good of a commercial for their capabilities, I think, as you could possibly get. So when you're pushing the envelope with a hypercar of this spec, like you expect performance, but do you expect that degree of safety in like a worst case scenario? Not necessarily. So
true. Safety, but like safety in a wide open space shuttle runway where there are no trees or anything else around it that might make it easy to kind of like flip and fall on nothing.
Okay, but okay, if you didn't think that was impressive enough
I thought it was impressive
for you,
This
He's
story came-
questioning it. He wasn't
Yeah.
sure if it was strong enough.
Not strong
This
enough.
story came
too strong, not
came, like,
strong enough.
right after I saw Fall Guy for the first time. So I just imagine this, like the driver, this thing just throwing that thumbs up out the window, just
Yeah.
like, we're good. Top Gear.
I don't know if he was throwing that out the window. It's probably more like a,
Oh my God, what
okay, I
happened?
think.
Yeah.
Give me a minute.
Sorry, I forgot to put in the dad noises.
Like when you took that guy out at third base last week playing softball.
He had that coming. And I definitely got the worst of it. According to Top Gear, they think that Hennessy's actually trying to set some sort of speed record with this. I was also surprised by the lack of footage. There's no way that they didn't have at least 20 cameras on this thing during the test.
No, they have footage.
Yeah.
Oh, there is footage?
They don't want you to see it. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. There's a very surprising lack of footage that we've seen yet.
Yeah. So Hennessy, about that, Hennessy said that it was like a, I don't know, competitive
Trade secrets.
trade secret. They don't. Yeah. So
Proprietary.
they took all the footage.
Yeah, because they built the car to flip in a different kind of way. Jeff, sure, the Venom F5 was strong, maybe a little too strong.
In what way? In what way?
I'm just saying
But why male models?
that if you make a car that's going from 0 to 250 in 4,000 feet, like, I don't know, I just feel like the aerodynamics package is something that maybe should have warranted a little more scrutiny.
Fair enough. I mean, obviously.
So maybe
Obviously.
a little too strong.
Totally lost my train of thought here.
Sorry,
Way to go,
you
David.
can't-
No, so
You're asking me too many hard questions.
well, one
Can't
thing
come back from this.
I do like when it comes to a project like this, I sometimes feel like these car makers like Hennessy. Do you think that they have this like they're playing with house money?
In a lot of ways, I think one of the things that this reinforced to me, I actually thought of that. I'm sure somebody else said it too, but like in the Tony Stark in the Marvel movies was like, you know, if you want to make an omelet, you got to break some eggs type of thing.
Oh, yeah.
Sort of a similar dynamic here. I mean, yes, they wrecked this vehicle, but at the same time, they've actually sold out of the F5s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So it's a 3 million. They may only make like 5 of them, but still, you can't get one right now. They're actually sold out.
That's a happy accident.
So, I mean, you would have, what that leads me to think is whatever they're doing in all their testing processes and their engineering, it's working. People are buying these vehicles, even though it has a $3 million price tag. The other thing is when you're focused on setting all these records, that type of competitive environment, it's going to breed a lot of innovation. I think they're probably able to take a lot of this engineering, a lot of this technology from a safety perspective, from a power perspective, just from an aerodynamics perspective as well, and probably license it to a lot of other vehicle makers too. I think there's a lot of opportunities there, not just for them to, as they live up to their sort of company mantra of we make cars go faster, they're also making them safer. They're also making them more efficient. They're making them perform better. So I think along the way in doing all this cool stuff that they're doing, they're also really pushing the industry forward in a lot of ways, I would guess. If they're not using some of the things, the lessons learned and sharing them or licensing them to other automakers, they sure could. Mm-hmm. And also if you are making vehicles or you are making race cars or anything else and you see this situation, if there's anybody I would talk to about safety in a vehicle, it's these guys.
Yeah. Well, so to that point, we often talk about like how you find worth in your job, right? So do you think an automotive engineer that works for Hennessy has a greater sense of like greater good or contribution to this world than like, say, the engineers behind the Civic?
Well, I mean, it's scalable, certainly. Okay. I mean, you're dealing with different clientele, but I think there is also the cool factor that comes in working at Hennessy. I wouldn't say it's greater than, but I definitely feel like you're contributing to a greater good in those areas. I think the difference there is obviously at Hennessy, you got a little more bandwidth in terms of what you can do and how you can experiment with things than at some place like Honda. But bringing it all together at some point, which you hope it does, there is a lot of benefit to these types of situations too, especially because everybody was okay.
Yeah.
It only cost $700.
Yeah, that's all they had to pay. Like, what does Hennessy do, Anna, when they're opening mail and they're like, oh, God, we got a bill from the Kennedy Space Center.
This is going to be bad.
This is going to be brutal. How are we going to break this to the client? And then it's like, just send him some of the loose change we have under the desk. $700 for nominal damage. My goodness.
Do you think there's a guy out there like a checklist? It's like, well, this is going to be concrete.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Got some sealant here.
Yeah, we tried bringing
We
that
went
up.
through, we had to replace the broom. To sweep up all that hydraulic fluid.
There's really no price on the stain that'll be here forever.
My shift ended 30 minutes ago. This is overtime.
Is it overtime? Is it so like that's it. Like the guy was paid $100 an hour. He couldn't get it up in the first hour. He was brainstorming for the next 3. And it's just his time to be like, nothing we can do. That's the next time a space shuttle is landing. I just want to see like one of the astronauts go like, what is that stain down there?
Is that a patch? That
Gross.
looks like, ugh.
Not NASA. Not NASA. All right. Well, before we jump into, in case you missed it, we have another word from our sponsor, Better Engineering. Looking for the ultimate industrial washing system for your facility? Better Engineering delivers state-of-the-art industrial part washers tailored for manufacturing, food, and pharmaceutical processing. We integrate automation and robotics to eliminate hand washing, increasing throughput and water savings while using eco-friendly chemistry. Whether you need customer stock cleaning systems, we've got you covered. Built to last, American quality stainless steel systems. Better Engineering, engineering cleaning solutions for a better tomorrow. Visit betterengineering.com to revolutionize your cleaning process today. That one's for producer Alex. Got the cue on that one. You got to hit it when Alex says so. All right, well, let's move on to, in case you missed it, the stories that maybe weren't as popular on our websites, but still stand to make a big impact on the industry going forward. Jeff, what do you have for us this week?
I grabbed an article that talked about the NTSB really getting behind this vehicle to everything plan for from the Transportation Department. So the National Transportation Safety Board, one of your favorites, acknowledged a new plan from the U.S. Department of Transportation to deploy vehicle-to-everything technology across U.S. roads and highways. The NTSB says it's been advocating for the technology since 1995. I can definitely vouch for that. I know Anna in another life worked with something, or a term that we became very familiar with called telematics.
Telematics.
That was something that was very, very popular, especially in the early 2000s, which was going to let vehicles at that point communicate more with repair facilities so that when something was bad, you could get ahead of it, be a little more proactive with maintenance. Well, we want to do a similar type situation here, but when we talk about vehicle to everything, we're talking about the vehicle communicating to other vehicles. We're talking about the vehicle communicating to different infrastructure, maybe even medical, if there's an accident, whatever the case may be. All of these different sensors, cameras, everything all involved with it would be able to be in touch with each other, ideally to create a safer environment on the highways. The plan, if you look at here at NTSB Chair Jennifer Harmody, the plan is a vital first step towards realizing the full life-saving potential of this technology, which we've supported for decades. Obviously, it's very expensive. You need to get everybody on board. You need to get the automakers to also play ball. But looking at what this could be long-term, I think it's a hard one to not get behind. Especially now, the first thing that came to my mind, we're getting up, not yet, both in the next couple of months here, we're going to be talking about bad weather. And how many times do we see in a snowstorm, the effect of one car hits another and it just becomes a domino type of effect here with all the vehicles, and you've got this huge, horrible accident. Ideally, in this type of situation, once the first accident takes place, there's a signal sent out to all the other vehicles. There's probably sent something out to first responders, law enforcement, any place and everywhere that you could send communication about what has happened. So this type of investment, when we talked about infrastructure before, hopefully this would come into play there as well. And we can figure out a way to make this happen. One of the things that's changed since 1995 that we're also going to have to consider with this, security. We've got this many messages, this much data going back and forth. We're talking about individuals, where they're located. We're going to have to make sure that's secure, which I would hopefully will be part of this. But again, we've been working on it for 30 years. So hopefully we've got the core technology down. We can add the security layer onto it, and we can get this in place, because I could just see numerous benefits from this type of arrangement.
Well, and it's not just the other cars, right? Like if there is an accident ahead, like, because that was the buzzword or the buzz term a couple of years ago, the V2V or the vehicle to vehicle technology. But the idea behind V2X is that, it not only alerts the other vehicles, but it alerts, the signage, the other infrastructure, maybe it closes an exit. Like there's so many things out there. And, unlike 1995 when the NTSB started recommending this stuff, pretty much everything we're talking about already has this baked in. This kind of communication technology, in one way or another, to a point, is already there. And we're already talking about these being nodes that can bounce information off of each other anyways. So I think a big part of the plan is just like finding the safest, most efficient way to get all these technologies to talk to each other. And I mean, if it's kind of already there, a lot of it makes sense to me. Anna, did you have a chance to check out this article? What are your thoughts on, V to X communication, where essentially your car isn't just talking to the car next to you, but kind of anything and everything in the surrounding area?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always a proponent of anything that can make the driving experience safer for everybody involved. I know there is some concerns, as Jeff said, about security. The other question I would ask too, and Jeff, maybe you can speak to this. I don't know. How does the insurance industry want to get involved in this? Because I bet they do.
I would think so.
Accessing this data and using it to tailor, based on people's driving habits and what they're doing in these circumstances. Is that going to be a roadblock, do you think, involved in this?
I think that's going to come down to probably consumer preferences. We've already got the things we can put underneath the dash. Every insurance company has a different name for them that collects all that data. So it'd be another way of accessing that. I think there's going to be some privacy concerns that definitely come into play here in terms of who can see this data and who it's being shared with.
And do you have an opt-out? That's the question,
Yeah, I think there'll be a lot of those things to work through on that side of it. But to get sort of these two big players on the same page potentially, it's the first step.
Anna, what do you have for us in case you missed it this week?
If I asked you to guess what the topic was, you never could. So I'm just going to jump right into it. This story is about honey. Wait, fake honey.
Fake honey?
Yeah.
I'm out.
Is that a Confederate honey is a big deal?
They've gone too far.
Did you say Confederate honey? No, that's not a big deal, but counterfeit honey is.
No, Confederate honey.
Confederate?
You can use it the same as it's not like counterfeit. It's just like phony. Go on.
Is that real?
Yep.
Okay, I'll look it up later. So the article, we ran it on our food manufacturing brand, and it talks about the growing demand for honey. And the issue is that this is a high value product. It's expensive. It's high demand. Apparently that any high value product in the food industry is very vulnerable to fraud. And what people are doing with honey is diluting it with syrups, like cheap plant syrups, to add that sweetness.
Like what other cheap plant syrups? What are they? What plants are they sourcing?
Well, probably like if you cut pure honey half with like corn syrup or something.
Okay, that's
how much cheaper would that be to produce?
That's what I figured. It's unfortunate.
So a 2023 study that they cited in the article said that 46% of the 147 honey samples that they tested were likely to have been adulterated with cheap plant syrups.
Half.
Wow.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, this was a study in the UK, so I'm sure it's just worse here.
I was going to say, sure, it's way better here.
Yeah,
way
exactly.
Better.
So it says that because of honey's characteristics, varying due to different sources of nectar, season of harvest, geography, it can be really complex to detect if they're adulterated or not. So the authentication methods that they have now have been very time consuming, very costly. But now scientists at Cranfield University in the UK have successfully tested 2 new methods to authenticate the honey quickly and accurately. And the first one uses a special light analysis technique that you can apply without even opening the jar.
Okay.
Yeah. So the method is called SORS, it's an acronym, SORS. And it uses a non-invasive method to rapidly identify basically the fingerprint, they say, of each ingredient in the product. And the scientists combine this with machine learning to successfully detect and identify any of these sugar syrups from other plant sources that aren't the honey. So the analysis method, they say, is portable. It's easy to implement, and they say that makes it an ideal screening tool for testing honey along the supply chain. You don't have to crack the lid. And I think in a real the thing that leads to the thing kind of
the tables have turned
moment here.
It's open source.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. Yeah. I just heard it somewhere. So I think like honey might just be one application for this, right? So, I looked into it, and this is actually kind of some scary data, but Larry Olmsted, the author of Real Food, Fake Food, told CNBC earlier this year, quote, "I guarantee you anytime a product can be passed off as something more expensive, it will be. It's that simple." So some estimates say that food fraud affects at least 1% of the global food industry at a cost as high as $40 billion per year. It's a practice they say has gone on for centuries.
I mean, yeah, right? Like snake oil.
I guess, yeah. So here we get better, I think, at hunting it down without having to spoil a product in the assessment of it, which I thought was a really interesting approach to it. So that's here to help in the future, I guess.
Could that be like an app eventually? Like where it could just be...
Well, it's a light analysis, so I don't know. Maybe. I don't know like the form factor exactly, but that's a good question. Maybe someday.
I'm just like, I'm genuinely concerned because my brother used to keep bees. Got me hooked to that good honey. Yeah. And then, he stopped because, bees are a tremendous pain to maintain. Yeah. So I've had to like dabble with all these other honeys. And I feel like at least I try to source the local ones because I subscribe to the wives' tale of it like helping with allergies if you have local native honey. But this is blowing my mind. But I mean, unfortunately, it's like the sad reality, like you said, that for any high value product, someone's going to try to make a buck ripping it off.
Right, exactly. So, to me, it's just cool that they're using the machine learning to, I think, like figure out what is commonly being used as an adulteration and look for that. And, yeah.
Jeff, this like makes me think of like something I would see in like an episode of The Simpsons where like the like phony Simpsons universe mob is getting into, faux honey and just running these tankers around town.
It is pretty crazy to think that it's that much of an issue and they're cutting it with syrups and stuff like that. I'm not a big honey person, but my wife and my mom are. So yeah, we have like the local person at the farmer's market that we always get.
You got to grill them next time.
I guess.
You got to be like, what's in this?
But I think this is also great to see because food in particular has done, I think, a better job of getting ahead of some of these supply chain issues when it comes to counterfeiting or false origins of food. A lot of it, they were one of the first industries to really get into the barcode scanning and the QR codes and stuff like that to really show sort of that chain of custody in terms of where everything came from, what its original source was. So having additional tools like this can only help with that. You just hope other industries can get ahead of it as well, sort of learn, as Anna alluded to, from what they're doing.
Well, I mean, another one that immediately comes to mind that I'm sure is just as bad, if not worse, maple syrup, right? Because that's an even higher markup.
Well, I mean, there's probably a number of documentaries about all the stuff that they have to deal with when it comes from Canada, making sure it's authentic and all that. But yeah.
Doug Hatch is still coming out swinging, saying, "I'm never going to be a Johnny Gilbert. And I'm here to prove you wrong, Mr. Hatch. I'm here to prove you wrong."
I think you're being heckled.
I think I am being heckled. That's okay because, like Jeff has said many times, water off a duck's back, Doug.
David's fine. He will be fine.
Definitely won't keep me up at night. My, in case you missed it this week, is about 3D printed breast implants and how they could be the future of plastic surgery. Now, stay with me here. A new preclinical study from Coal Plant Biotechnologies and Stratasys is trying to make 200cc commercial-sized regenerative implants printed on a Stratasys Origin 3D printer. The study is going to test the implant's ability to promote natural breast tissue growth and the ability to completely degrade over time. Since announcing this collaboration back in April of 2023, Coal Plant and Stratasys have been developing a way to bioprint breast implants and scale up the fabrication process. Now, initial results from the study are not expected to come out until the first half of next year. Coal Plant's implants are designed to regenerate natural tissue without eliciting an immune response, which is, something that is common in plastic surgery. Sometimes just different body types will reject implants. The technology could also provide a revolutionary alternative for reconstructive and aesthetic procedures, which represents a huge portion of the $3 billion breast implant market. Now, I chose this story just because I am a sucker for 3D printing applications, particularly when it comes to the possibility of implantables or in-body organs. And I thought this was pretty incredible because they are printing. So Coal Plant basically created a bio ink that mimics our collagen. So that way it makes it, it's easier for the body to accept it. It's also, I'm trying to, also they can seed it. So that way it makes your body more likely to grow its own natural tissue on top of it. I thought it was incredible. And I also think it's incredible that Stratasys was willing to join this sort of collaboration and make their Origin printer capable of printing this specific ink. And this all happened within like the last 16 months. And that's just incredible to me. Jeff, did you have a chance to check out this story? What do you think?
I think it's amazing that it can regenerate tissue, because what that immediately takes me is to what does come next, like the thing that leads to the thing in terms of, are we talking at potentially down the lines organs? Are we talking about skin tissue for burn victims? What else could be done here if it has that capability to sort of mesh with the body's natural elements or working mechanisms? What's next? So I think it's amazing from that perspective. And also whenever you see this sort of bioengineering that we're capable of right now with 3D printing, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I just thought it was incredible. It's inspiring. And I think we're just scratching the surface in what we're going to do with 3D printing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of questions I think that need to be answered. One is, how do we know it's not going to elicit an immune response in each individual patient? I think that's really hard to...
No, that's a big one with the study, I believe.
Yeah.
Looking at those results next year.
Yeah, because, I mean, they're doing studies now on, like, tattoo ink and how, anyway, just how when your body is, like, surgically invaded in any way, what does that do in the long term? But and the other thing I would ask too is when you say the implant would completely degrade over time, does that mean it dissolves in your body?
Yeah. So it basically, like, as new tissue grows, the bio ink would be absorbed.
And that would be another question that I have too, because I know some of the biggest issue that people have with breast implants tends to be that sometimes they leak.
Yeah.
And people will have like very serious medical complications that are, derived from that, or it takes them a long time to figure out that's what's going on, and that's why they don't feel well.
Yeah.
So if this is something that they're reacting to and it's just dissolving, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not something that could be removed.
Yeah.
I could see that being an issue as well. But again, it's in the study phase. So hopefully, they figure that all out before. I mean, it's like important work to be 3D printing in the medical space, I think, to Jeff's point too, about like how many other ways this can be used. It has such tremendous value when you think about it in the context of like what 3D printing can do. So I'd like to see what happens next.
Well, and it makes sense that you look at a market like the breast implant market, which again, like, what did it say? $3 billion a year, where there's a real, ability to make some money there. But then also I think of all the smaller reconstructive surgeries, that are used for so many different things, not just, like aesthetics, like they said, but also, the reconstructive market. And I think that would be, people with disabilities and other injuries, stuff like that. I think it could be incredible. It could be incredible. And I kind of give Stratasys a lot of credit to taking part in these types of studies, because I mean, they really don't, they really could be like, here's a printer. If you want to retrofit it, you can. Voids of warranty. Sorry, but instead they're just like, hey, our guys are on it. I don't know. I think it's kind of cool. All right. Well, before we get out of here this week, and before I take any more harassment from Doug, let's go down to our final thoughts. Anna, what's your final thought this week?
I just wanted to quickly share a note that I received from a listener this week. I won't say her name because I didn't ask, but she said that she had a chance to watch episode 182 when we talked about the Neom Line City.
Oh, yeah.
The city in the desert.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, before you lovely folks were even halfway through the subject, I had called my 17-year-old daughter to tell her to look it up. She is a high school senior that is planning on studying environmental biology in college. As I anticipated, she was super interested in the city as a whole. That type of living would be a stretch for me, but in answer to your question about whether anyone would volunteer to live there, my daughter gave a resounding yes.
Man.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
David, you're getting old.
Well,
I'm getting old.
Surprise to nobody. Yeah. You're getting old, and in no way could we tell based on the changing color of your face. I mean, that's really cool. I do
Yeah.
like it when people email in, because sometimes we like throw these questions out there, just like, yeah, who's actually going to do that?
Yeah.
And then like people email us and they're like, well, I would.
A very intelligent 17-year-old with great prospects and probably a more adventurous spirit than me. But so yes, I appreciate the note. That stuff, again, it's always great to hear. So
Doug's not wasting any time. He's still throwing them out there.
it says love you, David. Just take that.
But it's not you. I get it. My final thought this week was that yesterday, I took the day off and we took our kids my wife and I both took the day off, took our kids to the water park just up the road, which, it's kind of nice to be like, less than an hour away from the biggest like water park footprint in America. That's kind of cool. But it was also a good opportunity to spend half of the ride teaching my kids what the word hooky meant. I'm just like
Playing hooky?
Yeah, they're just like, no, we gotta go to school today, right? And I'm like, nope, we're playing hooky today. And just hearing like a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old go, what is hooky? And I'm just like, well, let's get to the bottom of it. And I understand that, we're all always working for the weekend, but every once in a while, just taking a day off, playing a little hooky with your kids and your wife, it's a really good time. I understand that not everybody can do that. I understand that, there are restrictions and people are getting points and they're on all different kinds of like HR tools. But in the event that you have the ability and the time and the resources, man, it is worth it. It was a great day. A little cold at first. And it turns out that those water rides still go real quick. If we have any engineers working on those water rides and they can figure out a way for the ones where you don't use any raft or any mat underneath you and you're just sliding down, if they can make it any way where you don't feel every individual crevasse that you're going as you like go through each tube, we could go a long ways there.
Yeah, I think you just have to be like 12 years old, then you don't care about any of that stuff.
So we thought that, we went down one ride in particular, and we're all just like, man, like you're back, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so we sat and watched like the next 10 people come off that ride, and everyone's just like, ooh.
Even the kids?
Even the kids are like,
oh, all right.
That's smarts. And just like,
Take it up the train.
Jeff.
It took you 20 minutes to explain the term hooky?
Well, I mean, I had the time.
Were you answering with a lot of questions when you were talking to them?
Yeah. That's what I started with. What does hooky mean to you?
You got real academic about this, huh?
We had the time,
I guess.
And it was just, it's like, it's where you sometimes skirt your responsibilities to, have a little R&R, do a little self-improvement.
Now I know why it took 20 minutes.
Yeah. I got another 20, Jeff.
David's like, there's also a term called playing hockey. That is different. That involves a stick in the ice.
Yeah. Unlike your neighbors that play hockey, this is hooky.
Different term.
Yes. Unplanned. Planned, unplanned.
No big observations from me this week other than enjoying the fact that they're starting to promote football games, which says we're getting into fall, which is also always awesome. Mm-hmm. Had kind of a nice, almost felt like a fall evening at the ballpark the other night.
Oh, yeah.
That was great. Good times.
Did you get lured into the excitement of the football season and then watch a preseason game and then?
I do not watch preseason
That's
NFL
a good call.
football.
Yeah.
This was for college. So, even though the first couple games usually aren't great games.
Yeah.
It's still cool to see the game day vibe.
Well, there's also something on the line. I was immediately the first preseason game. I'm like, yeah, football's back. And then I turned it on and I'm like, football's back in 3 weeks.
Yeah,
all right. Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. Well, before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at IN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. And subscribe to us on YouTube at IN Magazine so you can join us every Thursday when we go live and help fix potential future technical issues like Doug did this entire episode, and we are really appreciative. All right, for Jeff Franke and Anna Wells, I'm David Manti. This is the Today in Manufacturing podcast, and I'm no Johnny Gilbert.